So tonight's sutta is called the Girimananda Sutta, and it's a very profound teaching on the three marks of existence, and the setting is very interesting too. It's one of the sangha members is ill, and Ananda wants the Buddha to go talk to him to make him feel better, and the Buddha takes it as an opportunity to teach the Dhamma like he always does, and he turned it around on Ananda. He says, "You go talk to Girimananda, tell him this, and if you do that, he very well likely will feel better." On one occasion, the Buddha was staying in Savatthi, in Jita's grove, Anatha Pandika's monastery. Venerable Girimananda was sick and distressed. Ananda went to the Buddha and asked if he would visit Girimananda out of sympathy for him. The Buddha replied, "Ananda, if you would go to Girimananda and tell him of the 10 understandings, it is possible that upon hearing your words, his distress will be relieved." There's so much in that. One of the things that it's pointing to is the importance of a well-informed, well-focused sangha and sangha members so that they are able to help each other. And then to see that the Buddha is encouraging Ananda to teach the Dhamma to other sangha members rather than taking it all on himself. He understands that this is a little bit of pitch for our teacher training, but that teaching the Dhamma helps deepen our understanding simply because it's a little bit of a different focus than just me learning. And if you really want to understand what that's like, take the teacher's training. You don't have to, though. And and I should qualify that. Not everybody that listened to the Buddha and awakened became teachers. Most of them did. But some of them, Mahakassapa, if it wasn't for Mahakassapa, there probably wouldn't have been even a first Buddhist council, which means we wouldn't have any even remnants of the Buddhist teachings left. But Mahakassapa was one who preferred a solitary practice and a solitary life. And it was only occasionally that the Buddha would call Mahakassapa out of his day-by-day seclusion to go out and teach something very specific. But that was part of his encouragement here, and certainly to Ananda. The Buddha continues, "These are the 10 understandings you should teach Girimananda. 1, the Buddha starts right off with the most important, the understanding of impermanence. This Dhamma practitioner, well secluded while establishing jhana," that's the reference, the Buddha references that line in all of these, to emphasize the point that none of this can be done without a proper meditation practice that leads to a ever deepening level of concentration so that you can perform these other tasks. A mind that is constantly distracted, rooted in self-reference, rooted in ignorance, simply can't attend to these matters in a mindful way. Let me start over again. The Dhamma practitioner, well secluded while establishing jhana, knows that the 5 clinging aggregates, forming perceptions, mental fabrications, and ongoing thinking rooted in ignorance of 4 noble truths, are all impermanent. This is called understanding impermanence. So the big lesson the Buddha's teaching, Ananda, Girimananda, and everybody, Girimananda, and everyone else, including us today, is that to really understand impermanence at its most profound level, you have to understand the personal experience of suffering. You have to understand suffering, which in the Buddha's description of that is 5 clinging aggregates. We're going to get deeper into this in 3 or 4 weeks whenever we get up to the 5 clinging aggregates, and I got a new sutta for that too. But you can, depending on how the Buddha or a sutta is addressing something, there's different terms for basically the same thing. In other words, you can call the 5 clinging aggregates anatta because it's the personal experience of the abstract noun impermanence or dukkha is now experienced directly through the 5 clinging aggregates. So having a misunderstanding of self, the not self characteristic, being stuck in wrong views of who you are in relation to the world around you, is suffering. It is dukkha. But there's some delineations. There's impermanence, to recognize the environment that we're in and the possibility for awakening. There's a misunderstanding of self, that's that's the other important component of those first two, resulting in suffering, resulting in the ongoing personal experience of five clinging aggregates. Did I explain that well enough just to see the tie-in? So we understand impermanence by literally understanding who we truly are. But we begin with where we're at, which is we are having the experience, the ongoing moment by moment personal experience of being a five clinging aggregate. Is that a different way of saying it, but is that clear? That's what we are. So we're the experience of dukkha, and I just to make something a little bit more clear, because I'm going to get to it next week, but just to introduce it. The abstract noun for suffering in Pali and Sanskrit is dukkhata. The actual experience of it is called dukkha. So why am I saying that? Because there is a broad understanding that is part of our environment, but the ultimate understanding is very personal. And it's actually very well focused. It's one of the reasons why modern mindfulness gets lost from the Buddha's teaching, because most of modern mindfulness is taught that you should be mindful of whatever is occurring in your mind. And there's no insight into that. The Buddha structured the Eightfold Path so we could recognize impermanence through our own moment-by-moment actions, not as an abstract concept, but as a direct experience of suffering. But because our minds are so rooted in ignorance and prone to ignore that ignorance, there needs to be a framework, and actually I would say a gentle nudge to stay right there with your suffering. Not embrace it, not analyze it, but stay in your body. That's the entire Buddhist teaching, is to bring our minds from outside of our body, stuck in self-referential views outside of our body, and unite that mind and the body at the point of the first noble truth, at the point of suffering. This is how we develop understanding. Is that clear?
Yes.
Please tell me if it's not, because this is an important point. Okay. All right. This is called understanding impermanence. Understanding the five clinging aggregates is understanding impermanence. Understanding suffering is understanding impermanence. Understanding the not-self characteristic is understanding impermanence. I'm going to skip over some of my comments because I just gave them. Number 2 of the 10 understandings, the understanding of not-self. So the first understanding that Buddha wants Ananda to teach Girimananda is the understanding of impermanence. Teach him this, and then teach him about the not-self characteristic. This Dhamma practitioner, well secluded while establishing jhana, does not self-identify, and those of you that remember the Bahia Sutta will see the reference here, does not self-identify with what is seen or what is heard or what is smelled or what is touched or what is tasted or what is thought. They have developed restraint at the sixth sense base. Going to say it again. They have developed restraint at the sixth sense base. This is called understanding not self. So the big mystery of what I am can be understood by practicing restraint at the point of contact. The sixth sense base is my 5 physical senses and the sixth sense of consciousness, but it's not a grand consciousness, one mind consciousness with a big C. It's simply ongoing thinking rooted in ignorance of Four Noble Truths. That's the sixth sense base. And so as a human being, I interact with my outer world through my senses. And also I engage with my inner world through those senses as well, don't I? Because I will recollect a feeling or a thought in meditation or just in a random thought, and that will affect the way I'm feeling and thinking unless I have a well-concentrated mind. So the point I'm making is it is at the point of contact that we develop an understanding of the 3 marks of existence and the 5 clinging aggregates. Clear?
Yes.
Good. And that, again, that's the Buddhist teaching on understanding not self. And it points to the singular importance of having a right meditation practice, a meditation practice that develops concentration, because the definition of concentration is being united in my body, being able to stay with what's occurring rather than create self-referential scenarios about everything that arises. Okay. This is called understanding not self. Number 3, the understanding of unattractiveness. So now the Buddha and these next 2 references are to the actual experience of suffering, to understand it. The problem with suffering isn't so much that we don't know that we suffer or that we have stress in our lives or that we're disappointed. It's that we don't want to face it in a realistic way. We don't want to be dispassionately mindful of the experience of disappointment, because our minds are always grasping after what's next or more of something. We miss the point of even the blissful understanding of, this is a disappointing moment in my life, without the need for that to be any different. And why did I call that blissful? Because when we can do that, when we can stay present for whatever's occurring, even something that might have been completely disappointing up until this point, we learn to accept it. Why? Simply because it's what's occurring in our life. Why would I not want to accept what's occurring in my life? Because if I'm not accepting what's occurring in my life, I'm not accepting me in this moment. In that moment, I'm the one that's causing stress to myself. That's the second hour of the Salata Sutta. Is that clear? Mm-hmm. So we're talking about profound and radical acceptance of life as life occurs, moment by moment, at the point of contact. And how else would it be any different? We're psychophysical beings. We interact with the world around us at that point of contact through our 6 senses. So again, just bringing it all back to that. It's at that point. We can't get overly fixated on that, because we can create more stress. Wow, am I in the present moment? In fact, this whole notion of, just to use the phrase, the power of now, has created a mindfulness movement that is overly fixated on the present moment, rather than recognize the continuum of moment by moment by moment human life. We can't live in the now, but we can be present for our life as our life occurs. Why am I saying that? Because a human mind isn't capable of being fixated only in one moment of time and not be part of that continuum of the past moment, this moment to the future moment. It takes great concentration to be present for that progression. Is that clear?
But the interval gets smaller.
Yes, and that, I don't know if I should get into this right now. The interval gets smaller because the distraction lessens. The interval is a distraction, but we're not supposed to be supposed is the wrong way to put it. It's unskillful to think that I have to be mindful of each moment in time. When a mind is released from its own self-referential view, Jen said it great on retreat, and we brought it up a couple weeks ago, maybe last week, that ignorance requires time. When I'm no longer rooted in ignorance, it's not that time doesn't have an effect. It's simply no issue. In other words, I know that I got to be at the doctor's tomorrow at 9:15. I can be there without worried about each moment. When is 9:15? We just do that naturally. But to be united, to have a mind united in its body, it must be free of self-reference and living life as life occurs. And as soon as I start judging that or reacting to it or rejecting what's occurring, again, I'll say it in this way, I'm rejecting myself. The understanding of unattractiveness. This Dhamma practitioner, well secluded while establishing jhana, knows the entire body surrounded by skin and filled with decay and unclean things. Getting right to it. They know there is this body of hair, nails, teeth, skin, muscle, tendons, bone, marrow, organs, feces, urine, phlegm, sweat, tears. Understanding thus, they are always mindful of the unattractiveness of the body. This is understanding unattractiveness. Of all the things that Buddha could have taught as unattractive, there's a long list of them. the Buddha has us focusing on where we are at the point of contact in this body. And he's not teaching this lesson to denigrate the body in any way or dismiss the importance of being gentle with our body, but just to point out the obvious. Why would be so self-enamored with this body, no matter what it is, no matter how attractive or successful or big it is, when they're all the same? Remember the Dhatuvabhanga Sutta. Every person, no matter who and what they are, is made up of 6 properties and nothing else. There's nothing else added to that. So why be enamored with this body? But pointing out what the body is made of, something that we really don't want to pay too much attention to, helps us break that clinging to this form called me. It's just this, and it's all of this. And all of these things are nothing to be enamored about. When I'm thinking, maybe it's a way to teach this. If I'm thinking how wonderful I am, and I need the whole world to know how wonderful I am, I don't want them to know that I'm full of this and full of that, do I? I mean, I didn't use the exact words, but and all these other things. If our skin was transparent and you could see what's going on with me right now, you couldn't stand to listen to me, could you? And you wouldn't, and you probably wouldn't want to look at yourself that way. You ever those great pictures that came out? I used to have a Netter's Anatomy. If you ever get a chance to see something like that, you saw these pictures of the human. Netter's Anatomy is the greatest anatomy book ever, I think. And it's drawings. It's not pictures of people. And it's so beautifully detailed that this is what medical students study and other things like that. The point I'm making is you see the human body as it is rather than covered with this nice skin. It's important to see ourselves that way. And again, not so we grow to hate ourselves or think that we are disgusting, just to see ourselves in reality. This is what we are. There's nothing to be enamored about, is it? Does anybody have anything to say about that?
I do.
Yes, please.
I'm kind of wondering why he even puts a judgment on it. Like, instead of saying, this is what we are, this is what we all are, why does he put a judgment on it?
Where do you see the judgment?
Disgusting, I think, was the word he used.
Oh, well, I guess, yeah. Describing something that is disgusting as disgusting is not a judgment, is it? It might be, it might seem like an overly harsh, but that's the point that the Buddha is making. These things are disgusting.
Not all.
Where does he say that at?
That
Where
was
did-
that was in the text. The category.
Well, standing alone, they are though. Let me go through it. Filled with decay and unclean things, they know there is this body of hair, nails, teeth, skin, muscle, tendons, bone, marrow, organs, feces, urine, phlegm, sweat, tears. Understanding thus, they are always mindful of the unattractiveness of the body. This is understanding unattractiveness. So even something like the eyes are unattractive when you think of what happens to those eyes upon death, which we're all going to face. They're going to rot away. This is similar to the contemplation on the charnel grounds in the Satipatthana and the Anapanasati Sutta, where the Buddha teaches, and people have made meditation practices over this, but the Buddha teaches that just so we face the fact that this body is prone to decay, it's prone to suffering, it's prone to pain. It's just the way it is. It's not something that we should be so enamored at and so clinging to it. It's just a body.
Right. Yeah, I think that the confusion comes from him using the word unattractive, but he uses it in its core meaning. This, we should not be attracted to this.
To something that is this way.
Yeah. Does he actually use the word disgusting? No, he does not.
But there's somewhere else that he does.
Oh, he does.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Because I would have an issue with that too.
Well,
because
again,
you could also look at the body as this intricate,
Yeah, phenomenal thing
Phenomenal
that
thing.
heals itself, and there's many other things too.
Yeah,
I mean, I understand the point that, you know, it's sort of like that, remember, man, that thou art dust, and unto dust thou shalt return, or,
Yeah.
you know, or Shakespeare, do I not bleed like you? Do I not cry like you? To just kind of simplify this, these are the elements that we all are.
Oh, yeah, but I think the Buddha's teaching this to teach us things to teach us something that we know but we don't want to face. That this is what it means to have a human body. We have all these things. Every one of those things that the Buddha mentioned is prone to sickness and decay. And because of that, and remember the context, and also remember that these words are translated from
Right.
the Pali to
Right. We may not have the same words.
yeah. So, but the point is that look at these things that you are made of, that you are so enamored with having, and they're unattractive, aren't they? In their most basic way, they're unattractive because they're impermanent, because they're prone to uncleanliness and decay.
And he's teaching this to somebody who's suffering.
Right.
Yeah.
The body is suffering.
Yeah.
So it's context.
Yeah. Again, thank you for the question, because that is so important. That is the context. The Buddha probably the Buddha cared more for all human beings. I don't think it's an exaggeration, to anyone before him, because he saw suffering so clearly, and he was willing to teach that. And so, facing the truth about ourselves, literally for the first time, helps us start understanding what a true self is, and let go of that self-reference and constant self-aggrandizing that we do by simply looking at the truth. And the truth is that this is how all human beings are made up. We got all these things where it's part of us, and all of it is prone to sickness, aging, and death, and constant decay.
And you don't have control over it.
And you don't have control over it. In Anatta Lakkhana Sutta, the Buddha, if you don't have control over it, how can you call it a self? You can't. It's the body that I find myself in.
Nor any of the other factors.
Yeah.
So why become enamored? And what's the difference of this and this?
Yes.
It's what I'm making of this.
And that's really the whole point. So we see things clearly, so we stop being attached to it. It's just it. It's just what it is. Okay. Thank you. This is another aspect of dukkha, the understanding of drawbacks. This Dhamma practitioner, well secluded while establishing jhana, reflects on the drawbacks of the body. They understand the various pains of the body, such as disease of the senses, disease of the organs, disease of the mind, disease of the body, disease from changing weather, and that really means that just the change in the environment, that we live in an ever-changing environment. And again, this is a teaching in this section of all three marks in that one line, in the fourth line, the understanding of drawbacks. This Dhamma practitioner, well secluded while establishing jhana, reflects on the drawbacks of the body. What do you think about that, Helen?
Well, I understand the point of all of it. I guess and again, it could be the translation. I think it would have been just as effective if it had been a sort of dispassionate statement. We are all bones, we are all hair, we are all nails, we are all feces, we are all, so get over it, you know, versus the way it came across to me as, you know, we are this disgusting ball of stuff, so get over it. So that's just
St. Augustine.
Yeah, or St. Augustine, yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess that's just because so much of how he teaches other things is to teach us to be dispassionate or.
Here's a difference. I'm sorry to interrupt you. He's teaching suffering here. So it wouldn't it would be
So it's more appropriate.
it would be a great
feel.
disservice to say, the body's full of all this stuff, but it's, you can hang on to it, or you can still love your body or stay attached to it. He's just being realistic. The people that don't understand the Buddhist teaching, even when they're reflecting on modern Buddhism, will say it's a completely pessimistic teachings. It's all about suffering. It's not all about suffering. It's all about, for the first time in our lives, accepting that they're suffering and not run away from it. And so this helps, again, put me back in my body, instead of when I find something wrong with your body, instead of taking it personally, I simply, or a Dhamma practitioner understands this is simply part of the game. I do everything and the Buddha was the same way. He understood that life of self-denial that leads to disease and pain and suffering. And so he didn't teach that, but he taught a middle way of taking good care of the body, but not be enamored with the body. We do it because it's an expedient. It's a practical thing to do, but not because not because I think so much of myself that I need to keep this body going for ever and ever and ever. I can never be sick. I don't want any disease. Look at hypochondria. Look at, I don't know why it popped in my head, Howard Hughes, how he lived the last 20 years of his life completely isolated because he was so afraid of getting sick. And he was afraid, and I mean, from what I read about him, he was so afraid of getting sick because he wouldn't be able to spend all his money. Talk about it, self-referential ego self. If he understood that sickness is just part of life, maybe he would have been a little easier on himself. But it is important. The Buddha's teaching suffering, and facing suffering is not always pleasant, but it's kind of the point. Dukkha occurs. Let's bring our minds into it and see what life is really about. How's that, Helen?
Well, as I said, I understood the context. It was just the angle.
The directness.
Well, maybe it's the directness. It just seemed more emotional than he usually writes.
That might be me. That might be me. Number 5, the understanding of abandoning. This Dhamma practitioner, well secluded while establishing jhana, abandons all thoughts of sensuality, all thoughts of ill will, all thoughts of harmfulness, all unskillful mental qualities. This is understanding abandoning. What the Buddha is teaching is we understand what we are to abandon. That's called understanding abandoning. 6, the understanding of dispassion. This Dhamma practitioner, well secluded while establishing jhana, understands this is peace. This is the exquisite stilling of fabrications. This is the relinquishment of all clinging. This is the cessation of craving. This is the full development of dispassion. This is complete unbinding. This is understanding dispassion. Having the direct experience of developing the Dhamma, letting go of all of this self-reference, all this self-attachment to form, feeling, perceptions, mental fabrications, and consciousness, and having that exquisite stilling of passion. And it's pointed out again, just so we understand the body that we're in, we understand and have a direct experience of something that up until that point is merely abstract, conceptual. Actually having that exquisite feeling of a stilled mind. And it comes through understanding where we're at in the body that we're in the mind that we have. And the way that our senses, if they're rooted in ignorance, misinterpret everything that's occurring. Number 7, the understanding of cessation. Again, understanding means not just understanding the concept of it, but understanding something as far as a Buddha is concerned is having the direct experience of it. The understanding of cessation. This Dhamma practitioner, well secluded while establishing jhana, understands this is peace. This is the exquisite stilling of fabrications. This is the relinquishment of all clinging. This is the cessation of craving. This is the development of dispassion. This is complete unbinding. Emphasizing that. That's the whole point, is unbinding from these views, unbinding from clinging to a form. Number 8, the understanding of distaste for every world. And you remember we went through quite a few different suttas from the end of the summer through the fall about the foolishness of trying to establish a self in any non-physical realm, whether it's in a future realm, if I'm a good enough Buddhist and do enough chanting and bowing, that I'll get rewarded. That's another world that we're creating, an imaginary world. Or thinking that, I always say this maybe for Frank, that I'm the world's greatest banker. Even though that might be true in Frank's sense, it's an imaginary establishment of me, isn't it? It's in my head. It's another world that I created, or another realm to establish myself in. That's what the Buddha is referring to here. Understanding the distaste for every world, this Dhamma practitioner, well secluded while establishing jhana, refrains from all worldly entanglements, attachments, compulsions, and conditioned thinking. This is understanding distaste for every world. Is that a clear statement?
No, could you read that again?
Yes. Understanding of distaste for every world, excuse me. This Dhamma practitioner, well secluded while establishing jhana, refrains from all worldly entanglements, attachments, compulsions, and conditioned thinking. This is understanding distaste for every world. Remember, it's not just an abstract conceptual understanding, it's the direct experience of disentangling yourself from the world. Ceasing, another word for disentangling, is release, or ending your clinging to things of the world in a self-referential way. It certainly doesn't mean we don't live in the world anymore. We know that's what a self-referential ego self will jump to. What happens to me when I let go of all these views? We learn to live peacefully with our mind united in our body, moment by moment, no matter what's occurred, including the ever-changing internal environment of our body. The pains and the ever-changing cycles of our physical body. We have now learned that that there's nothing personal in that. And so we continue to live our life without being distracted by the normal functions of a human body and a human mind. It just is. And we apply this also to our thoughts in meditation. When we're sitting and recognizing that we're caught up in our thoughts again, and we come back to our sensation, come back to the sensation of breathing, that's a direct experience of disentangling yourself from the world by disentangling yourself from your own thoughts. Is this a little more clear?
Mm-hmm.
Disentangling? Good. Thank you for the question. Number 9, the understanding of the undesirability of all fabrications. And notice the Buddha's not saying that life is undesirable at all. He's saying what we're living from an ignorant viewpoint, from a fabricated viewpoint, is undesirable. So the body isn't good or bad. It's not, in fact, I wouldn't even say it's disgusting from a realistic view, because it's simply just a body. But we have to get through that understanding of my clinging to this form as me, to understand that what a self is always in a constant state of becoming. The internal state doesn't have much bearing on that, except that's just the repository for where we find ourselves. An awakened human being, then, their ongoing thinking is simply a reference point to what's occurring. The hard thing to understand about that is, where is the self-reference in that? Well, there isn't anymore. Can everybody kind of understand that? I know this is a very abstract thought. To be living presently in what's occurring, and right in this room, without any self-reference. Can you imagine it? And some of you have actually experienced it a few times too. But can you imagine that, what life would be like in this moment, to have no self-reference, to simply be present with what's occurring? This brilliant teaching.
I think everything will be very fresh.
Yes, everything, and everything is meaningful because it's fresh. Even if it's the same, even if it's the same meditation.
Same thing. But
because
it's unique.
it's unique because it's present. It's in this moment. That's the real power of now, is to be able to access them. But we can't access that by strong intention, but without a well-concentrated mind and the right framework to understand what's occurring. So something else is the Buddha. It would be easy enough for Siddhartha Gautama, it would have simplified his life greatly if he awakened and said, okay, everybody just learn the power of now and you're good to go. Just be here now. Alan Watts said that in 1963 or 64, I think. Be here now. The great it is the answer to everything, except we can't just do it by straight intention, by straight desire. Why? Because our minds are rooted in ignorance of Four Noble Truths. The understanding of the undesirability of all fabrications. This Dhamma practitioner, well secluded while establishing jhana, this is where you got that from, Helen, is horrified, humbled, and disgusted with fabrication. So it's not disgusted with the human body, although there is a reference. Disgusted with, horrified with my own fabrications. And as we understand our fabrications, they should be horrifying. We should be disgusted with them. It's the whole point of the Dhamma, to be disgusted with views that completely distract me from living the life that I want to live.
It feels disgusting when you become unattached from something and you can experience cessation, and then the next moment you're caught up in self-identifying or self-referential views, and you're missing that free state or that experience of unattachment. It feels disgusting.
It does. And the other thing that the Buddha is addressing something that is still so prevalent today, and it's that, and it's the idea of, I'm going to get in trouble for this. It's the notion of over reverence for human life. And there are going to be people, I'm going to be getting emails. And that doesn't mean that we shouldn't have reverence for human life, but we should have reverence for realistic human life. We should understand it, because to not understand it, I'm going to get on my soapbox a little bit, to not take the time to understand what a human life is the essence of irreverence to me. And I think you might agree. Would you agree with that? To not take the time to understand who you are is irreverent to yourself, not to some grand spiritual scheme or to God or anything. It's the essence of disrespect for me to continue ignorance, especially when I know better. It's disgusting for me. If I'm looking at myself realistically, it would be disgusting for me to know that I'm living a life rooted in fabrications and yet insist that I continue to do so. That's the direct and strong stance that it takes a Buddha to make. So it doesn't mean that life itself is disgusting, but it does mean that it is ultimately disappointing unless I understand what's occurring. And when I do understand what's occurring, it's not disappointing at all. Even things that are in the past might have been disappointing are no longer disappointing because I don't take it personal, including this body. So there's a great, Siddhartha Gautama taught a way to develop authentic reverence for my life in a way that I never knew I was missing. In other words, a self-referential ego self is always treating itself as establishing its own greatness or its own individuality, rather than, and that's the struggle with life, isn't it? I mean, that saying, whoever has the most toys at the end wins. Not all of us are chasing that, but that's kind of what we do in life. I would say whoever has the most understanding wins. And that's often exemplified like that. You know, it's got nothing to do with cars or houses or who our friends are or who our political party, anything. It has to do with understanding who I am. And if I think I have to keep creating something, keep fabricating something, and I'm stuck in that is a horrific thought, isn't it? Unless I have a way out of it.
Well, this is where this whole notion of protecting other people's rights can get so completely confusing, because you're in a lot of times you're trying to protect fabrications.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, that's absolutely true.
Where so-called, protecting somebody's freedom. Well, there's a lot of things where freedom doesn't apply.
It doesn't.
But
I mean,
if you're trying to push that through, you're getting yourself in deep water.
yeah, often people see freedom as a lack of responsibility when it's just the opposite. True freedom takes a lot of responsibility. True freedom to ourselves takes a lot of responsibility. It takes an eightfold path. But we don't, and in general, the world, we want to see the world as always a positive place, the whole idea of positive thinking. We always try to put a positive spin on it. I would say that even, again, I'm going to get in trouble, even religion tries to do that. Life is, in a sense that life is so horrible, but in the end, you get to go to heaven, and that's kind of that whole, and that's just ignoring the suffering in life, isn't it? I can grin and bear it because I know as a good Catholic, I'm going to go to heaven. Well, again, I've just missed my whole life, hasn't it? I'm more concerned about where I'm going than where I am. And I can't reconcile where I am unless I understand where I am, or else I'll always be rejecting it because it's painful. Frank, did you have a question? Okay. Almost done. Number 10, the understanding of mindfulness of in and out breathing. You can bring us right back to the beginning of the Satipatthana Sutta. This Dhamma practitioner, well secluded, sits comfortably, legs folded, their body erect, setting mindfulness to the fore, remaining mindful of the in-breath, remaining mindful of the breath in the body, they breathe in. Again, this is just simple instructions on how to meditate. Remaining mindful of the breath in the body, they breathe out. Nothing manipulated here. However the breath is found, they breathe in, they breathe out. While breathing with long breaths, they know they are breathing with long breaths. The reason why the Buddha is teaching that is even during the Buddha's time, there was people that taught very intricate breath manipulation techniques and called them meditation. It's still prevalent today. The Buddha is saying, don't do that to the breath. Don't treat it that way. Treat it dispassionately. However your breath is, that's your breath. If it's a long breath, know that you're breathing with a long breath. This just means notice it. Be mindful of it. While breathing with short breaths, they know they are breathing with short breaths. This Dhamma practitioner trains themselves. I will breathe in and breathe out sensitive to the body. Again, it doesn't mean that we are becoming overly enamored with our sensitivity. In this sense, being sensitive to the body simply means I'm using my senses the way they're meant to be. I'm uniting my mind and my body. I'm in it. While breathing in, bodily fabrications calm. Just as a simple fact of doing right meditation, bodily fabrications calm. It might mean for most of us in the beginning that it's only for a moment or two, but we find ourselves in an agitated state in meditation, we come back to the sensation of breathing and bodily fabrications calm. Is that true for every one of you, even if it's just for a moment? So the Buddha wasn't lying. Good. While breathing out, bodily fabrications calm. So that the entire cycle, noticing it. And almost anybody that just notice, forget about having a complete eightfold path integrated into your life. Just doing that helps your body calm, doesn't it? It's a natural response. But if we start manipulating my breath in any way, if I'm thinking, well, I should be, years ago, me and a partner of mine developed, remember rebirthing, that rebirthing movement? So we developed our own rebirthing method. We called it soul breath. And it was remarkable. We were both, I had trained a little bit in NLP, neuro-linguistic program, and Barbara had too, and she was really a master. But we developed this rebirthing technique, and pretty quickly we had people having all kinds of experiences during our workshops until I realized about a year into it that I was just manipulating people through anybody that breathes that long and that quick for a longer is going to have some kind of reaction in their body. The body just does that when it gets too much oxygen. When it gets over oxygenated, it can have hallucinations. It can have shaking and violent movements and all kinds of things. So we would talk people into doing this over 4 hours, and they would think they had wonderful experiences, but it was just an experience. And it was such an intense experience of distraction that it seemed like it was valuable. But it took me a while to realize what I was doing there. And I'm not quite sure where I got to, but, and it was because of manipulating the breath in a direct way that we did this. And I wouldn't say I caused direct harm to people, but I certainly wasted their time and money inadvertently. I wasn't trying to take their money, but that's really the case. The Buddha realized all of these things about the breath, and he taught to treat the breath with the same reverence we hope to treat ourselves. It's just the breath. And I know I said that a lot, but there's so much meditation taught about that is really just breath manipulation. This Dhamma practitioner trains themselves to breathe in and breathe out, sensitive to joy, sensitive to pleasure, and sensitive to mental processes, meaning we just are able to observe what's going on rather than react to it. This Dhamma practitioner trains themselves to breathe in and breathe out, sensitive to the calming of mental processes. This Dhamma practitioner trains themselves to breathe in and breathe out, sensitive to thoughts arising and passing away. We do this all in meditation, don't we? We recognize the thoughts are arising and passing away, coming back to the sensation of breathing. This Dhamma practitioner trains themselves to breathe in and breathe out, sensitive to satisfying the mind. That's a direct counter to dukkha, to an unsatisfying mind. To recognize that this is satisfying to the mind. To withdraw myself and my thoughts and my fabrications from worldly entanglements. To be sensitive to the body, meaning my mind is now united in the body, is satisfying to the mind. It's kind of like you've been traveling a lot and you finally get home, and it's satisfying to finally be home, isn't it? That's that feeling of satisfaction of a mind united in the body. And every one of you has had that experience, correct?
Yes.
All right. Good to see you. I'll talk to you in the morning. See you, Eric. I'll post this later so you can listen to the end of it.
I have to listen to it again.
I do too. Have a safe trip. I'll talk to you tomorrow, Frank.
Good night, guys.
This Dhamma practitioner trains themselves to breathe in and breathe out, sensitive to releasing the mind. That's something that we do. We release the mind. It's done within the framework of the Eightfold Path and the learning that we develop, but it's a direct action. Breathe in and breathe out, sensitive to releasing the mind. This Dhamma practitioner trains themselves to breathe in and breathe out, sensitive to impermanence. Breathe in and breathe out, sensitive to dispassion. Breathe in and breathe out, sensitive to cessation. Breathe in and breathe out, sensitive to relinquishment. Again, you could say that's the whole Dhamma right there. This is called mindfulness of in and out breathing. What a lesson he just gave Ananda. Ananda, go to the ill Girimananda and tell him of these 10 understandings. If Girimananda develops these understandings, his disease may be relieved. He's not making a prediction, but he's saying there's a good chance. Ananda, having learned these 10 understandings from the Buddha, went to Girimananda. Girimananda, hearing Ananda, was relieved. His disease abandoned. That's the end of the sutta. Quite a comprehensive teaching on the 3 marks of existence, isn't it? Let me see how Jane and Terry are doing in the room. Hello, Jane.
Hi, John. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. As I'm listening, I'm realizing that I am at that point where I am facing directly the effects of aging on the body. And, more aches and pains. And in spite of Matt's best efforts with this acupuncture, I realize that you know, the body's going to continue to age, and I'm working on accepting that. So
Yeah. Good. I mean, it's going to continue to age if we're lucky.
that's right.
And by the way, I got a pain back in here, Matt. That's unbelievable how he makes us feel. Thank you, Jane. Let me see how Terry is. Terry, how are you? Terry? Terry, are you there? Maybe he's left the room or something. Pardon me?
It said, wake up, Terry.
So we'll go around the room. Please ask any questions or make any comments, but I'd like to hear your understanding of how this fits into the 3 marks, and I'll start with that.
Good to be here. Thanks, John, for this teaching. This makes me think of very human process, story and image, and how we use story and image. And most of the time, to ill effect. You know, the story is just a story, and most people believe that it's their core identity and who they are.
Yeah.
And the image that comes from the story that is believed to be the core identity is really a distortion or a fabrication. And
yeah.
That keeps us in ignorance. So it's basically like we're in a bubble and we're walking around in a bubble that's created by our story and the images of that story. And we think that it's reality. We think it's the real world. We think that what we're seeing is not the bubble that's created by our story and the images from that story, but actually real life, reality. And so we wander in confusion
And fear.
and fear, you know, and the form, feeling, perceptions, mental fabrications, consciousness is that bubble, is that film that is projected by our own story and through the images of that story that we think is reality. So the Buddha Dhamma is, the Buddha saw all of that. The Buddha knew this. The Buddha dissolved that and was released from that. And that's what his Dhamma is for unbinding ourselves from this story that we think is real.
Burst in the bubble.
Yeah. And detaching and detangling from these distortions, these images that are born from the story. So somehow that was related to tonight's talk.
Thank you. Using that image of living in that bubble, and we know that it's a bubble, and we know that it's fragile and it can get burst at any moment, and that's the underlying fear that, whether we realize it or not, that every human being has. When the Buddha said in the Loka Sutta, where there's desire, there's fear, and it's that it's the insistence on not wanting to face our fear that has us living an unrealistic life. And even what Helen was bringing up, we don't want to face the fact that this is what's going on inside isn't all that pleasant because we're afraid of it. And we don't want to face the fact that this is the body isn't good or bad. It's not strong or weak. It's not right or wrong. It just is. But this is what it is. And we should realize it. It's a key element. Thank you. Lorna, good to see you.
Well, it's just been such an enjoyable sutta. In this sutta, you kind of look at the same thing in a different way. For instance, you've actually said tonight that we should be disgusted with ourselves for high making, in other words. I don't think I've ever looked at it quite so bluntly as that. I've always looked at it as it's the human condition, just be gentle with yourself. Your mind has picked up on a train of thought and you've just gone down that road for a while. In that train of thought, you realise it, come back to your breath and just have that gentle sort of cycle through the day when you're mindful.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I know it's, like Helen says, everything's through a translate, many translations to get to the, so, just the word, you can't hang up on one word sort of thing, but I haven't really looked at what we're doing as, in that sort of language before. And then for some reason tonight, where she's been teaching, the Buddha's asking us to be mindful of moment by moment how much, wrong thought that we have throughout the day, etc. And yet every night when we go to bed, we go to sleep, and for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours, the world is going by without any judgment from us.
Yeah.
And there's that blank space in every 24, well, maybe hopefully every 24 hours, you lay in bed and you completely...
No more bubble.
No more bubble, yeah. And the world goes on quite well without it,
Yep.
You just to notice it. And then of course you get up and you get to the bathroom and you're in the shower or whatever, and drinking coffee, and your mind's off again. But there is a time in every 24 hours where we're not engaging in this, that we're asleep. And
Well, hopefully on our cushions too. But.
yeah. But you really are very distant from it in sleep, I think.
Oh, yeah.
The dreaming, but anyway. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. The using that word disgusting it's a harsh, powerful word, but when you think of what does disgusting mean, it means an extreme distaste for something. And developing an extreme distaste for my own fabrications provides the motivation and impetus to let it go. If I continue to place value, any value on a fabricated view, I'll never let go of it. If I think it's serving me in some way, even the notion that I should always maintain positive thoughts or not see things in reality is a fabrication that I'm attached to. And if I continue to stay attached to it, I'll never let it go. But if I become disgusted with it, I'll let it go. Again, the brilliance of the Buddha's thinking on this is remarkable. And he's not treating awakening as a game. He is treating it as something as life or death, literally, because there is no life if there's no understanding, at least as far as the Buddha's teaching. And again, of course, you live your life, whether you believe in the Buddha or follow his teachings or not, you're having a human life, but that's not the point. Are you present for your human life? Are you at peace? Do you understand what's really going on?
Once you've been taught, you should be disgusted.
You should be.
Because you know the reality. So to slip back into the fabrications, maybe it's too judgmental to say to be disgusted, but why go through that process of slipping back into the laziness of this fabrication.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it too.
Well, maybe disgusted is the opposite of tolerant. Yeah, maybe not being tolerant. I don't want to get lost in words, but
Yeah, but
This process is not just this easy path. And to use that word disgusted is appropriate because it's like a shake of get to work and when you're sitting, understand that when you're slipping fabrications, that is something to be repelled by.
yep, you should be. And again, any word can be taken any way. Depends on what our frame of reference is, what we're holding in mind in the moment. So if we have a charge about the word disgusted, we'll react to it and probably put a negative connotation on it. Like, this is not something that I don't want to be disgusted with fabrications, not because we're enamored with fabrications. We don't like the word disgust or whatever other word we might be, but it is the appropriate word when you recognize it. And it's not a harsh, it's not a judgmental word. You know, again, it could be a judgmental word, or it could be just a dispassionate and realistic observation of what's occurring. And so I can think back of behavior that I had rooted in fabrications, and I am disgusted in what resulted from that. Not to the point where I got to beat myself up. In fact, it's really within the framework of the Eightfold Path. I can both be disgusted by my fabrications while I'm treating myself gently. In fact, that's the only way to do it. I can't realistically be disgusted with my fabrications unless I'm at peace with myself, or else I'm in a constant struggle of defending my views.
It's like other words have said they don't like the word ignorant.
Yeah.
And it's really, it's almost, is it easier for you to say dreamlike? Because that's what you are. You're in a dreamlike state of this make-believe story you're weaving around.
Yeah. I mean, again, one of the things that I had to come to grips with, this is years ago, is presenting an authentic Dhamma and not fudge words like ignorance, or say something, oh, well, you know, it's dreamlike, because it just doesn't fit. You know, it's just not, it doesn't relate to the Dhamma at all. It needs to be direct, and it needs to be this way because of where it's taking us. Now, again, this isn't, the Buddha didn't teach the Dhamma to keep us entertained along the way. It's just the opposite. Or another word for entertainment would be distraction. Distract along the way. He wanted us to wake up. And according to him and according to me, there's nothing really more important. Great class. Kevin, good to see you.
Good to see you too. Not sure what you quite asked again, but
do you see how this talk fit into the 3 marks, or anything else you want to talk about?
yes, I think it's a little bit more. I think it's solidified more than the Ananda Sutta when we talk about that. This is not me. This is not mine. This is not who I am. This makes it a little more clear.
Yeah, I think so too.
I think that as you understand this, you start to be more vigilant at the sense gates, because that's where the fabrication manifests, and that's the distraction manifests there. So
yeah, that's right.
It's very clear, and appreciate the talk. It's worthy of more study.
Thank you. Glad you're here tonight. Ron, good to see you.
Yeah, I used to kind of approach these things with the thought of this, this stuff is just silly, the fabrications, they're just plain silly. But that doesn't really get you far enough. They are really, you should really take heed that this is not the way to do it. But to do that and not beat yourself up, that's a very fine line that you walk.
Oh, it is. And again, that's where the Eightfold Path comes in. And hopefully somebody who knows how to teach it reminds you to be gentle. That's why you hear me say it all the time, because it is difficult. And we could easily fall into harsh judgments of ourselves, unless we have the right framework. It's another reason why most singular meditation practices don't work and often lead to some pretty, I've had people call me up that I don't want to get into it, but we became very psychotic from an unstructured meditation practice. It's another way to look at it, not to bring up something awful, but it makes the point that I heard on the news the other day about that poor young girl that got into the wrong Uber car. The person that did that did it because of a fabricated way of, I'm not trying to diminish it or explain it. He was deeply disturbed by a fabricated quality of mind. It's disgusting, isn't it? I'm not just saying that that our fabrications will lead to the same thing, but they're just as far removed from reality, aren't they?
But they lead to harm.
They lead to, even if the harm is just not being present for my life, to me, that's enough harm. I probably got involved in, when I first started looking at Eastern religion, I wanted to learn how to fly around the cosmos on a little nice carpet, but that didn't work. But rather quickly, I realized that what I wanted was to understand my life and have it be satisfying if it's possible. And it does that. It does that. It gives you everything you want if you don't want too much. If you just want peace of mind and a clear understanding of what's occurring, it's the path.
Yeah, especially when you contrast it to all the other paths that you follow, which just did get that.
Yeah, it's just a practical way of living in the world, seeing things clearly. Thank you. Helen, good to see you. Thank you for all your input tonight.
Thank you.
Inspired a great
I seem
class.
to have launched 1,000 questions from that.
You did?
No, I understand the context because we've all been exposed to this through different suttas. And maybe the point of the language was to further drive home the point, but I understand the context of it. I'm not confused at all by that. It was just sort of when you're sailing, you tack. You can still be aimed at one point, but you tack to the right, and you still get there. So this is just a slight tap of the sails to me. But yeah, I think that it was a more in-depth look at the 3 marks of existence.
Yeah. Thank you. Appropriate for where we are in the course?
Yeah.
Good. Thank you.
As we all grow. John?
Yeah.
I have to head out, so I'll say goodnight.
Good night, Liz. It's good to see you. Andrew, good to see you. How are you?
Good evening. John, I have nothing to add.
I'm glad you're here. You always add a lot. Thanks, Andrew. Mary, good to see you.
Good to see you. I think we really got maybe Helen's question, or maybe just whatever, it created some light on something I hadn't really thought of before. I often think that when I'm distracted by my fabrications, or if I'm cleaning aggregates or whatever that is taking me off the path, there are times where I will think of it like as a colossal waste of time. And so taking it one step further, that it's a serious colossal waste of time. You're missing your life. Like, I think what we're talking about tonight is a greater seriousness of what's at risk. Not just a gentle, because like in the practice, you can get to a place where you feel like you're applying it, you're using it, and you're narrowing the gaps of being off the path, and you're maybe utilizing it and teaching others in some way, or you're having real life experiences that are validating that this in fact works, right? And you can kind of get comfortable in that space and feel like you're still working on the path. But part of what I'm taking away tonight is you could use words like recklessness or wastefulness or other words that maybe don't have the same, well, reckless is a pretty good word, but by not taking it more seriously and taking on the assignment that the time to awake is now, and how serious, the task in front of us is, if we're really serious about this. I mean, all in a good way, but like what's on the other side, there's work to be done there, that there's much progress has been made, but there's like this, maybe some of the serious, I'll speak for myself, maybe some of the more serious heavy lifting is still ahead of me. So, and that's okay. That's okay, right? Yes.
In fact, I would say you have to see it that way. It's a realistic way of seeing it.
Right, I don't think I've seen it that way too, with the urgency.
Yeah, the cow's always there. It's always chasing us. None of us know when the end's going to come. And so let's get to it. I mean, for me, if I knew I got a week left, I'm glad I got it with the level of understanding I have than not, and even to understand that process. So, and again, it's just a realistic way. We have, it's such an ingrained in us that we don't see inside the body, like the Buddha pointed out, and the other difficulties of life. We don't want to admit that life is difficult. We want to keep saying everything is wonderful and there's always a reward and there's always another sunny day. Well, all of that takes us out of living our life, because we can only live our life right now. And the only way we can live our life right now is to radically accept what's occurring, or we're out of our body.
And the other thing I got from tonight too, and I've experienced this before, but certainly tonight, and maybe this relates back to the remarks, but that it really is all about, removing the layers, removing the bubble. I was even thinking about how we were talking about pruning at the beginning of the class, but pruning, like you've become this big bramble and you're pretending it's really beautiful. And it's not, and there's a lot of suffering because the thing that should be growing underneath it can't, and other things are dying because these, like when a tree gets taken over by vines that shouldn't be there. I'm not the landscaper, I'm not the tree hugger, my sister is, but I did think of that, and you might look at something and think it's a thing of beauty because you want to, or maybe you don't want to prune, or don't know how. But there was a point in something you said today where it really is about getting back, and probably what's part of the scary part is that you're really stripping down to the absolute bare essentials of the sixth sense gates, right? So there you are standing there in your nakedness or your disgustingness or whatever. And only then can you experience now. Otherwise, you're still becoming, you're still maintaining, you're still doing all these other things, even if you've made progress in this process. It's right there. Right.
The significance of that teaching, that it's at the point of contact with the world that we develop the Dhamma.
And that's who we are.
And it can't be done any other way. In other words, the whole idea of even just, I'm going to do my best with the Eightfold Path because I'll get rewarded for it at some point from something,
Or that life
is
will
is a
be
complete
easier.
distraction. It's a complete fabrication.
Right, or that you'll have better outcomes or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah,
But to do it because I want to understand.
right.
I want to understand this human life and the world I live in.
Well, and do you observe people, I don't mean to take more than my time, but do you observe people replacing whatever it is they came in the door with, and then they replace it with a practice, and maybe they get
Oh,
replaced?
I've seen it in every one of you
Right.
and online. I mean, it's remarkable, and not just to want it. Honestly, every one of the regulars, that has really put the time and have, from where I sit, have made remarkable changes that are obvious. And it all comes back to being mindfully present with a well-concentrated mind, whether you think it or not, and you might have a little bit more to go, but the changes in each and every one of you and in the Saturday group and some other people online, it really is remarkable. Letting go of all that stuff. Thank you. David, good to see you.
I came to this practice and took a much more radical approach.
Yeah, you did.
And the charnel grounds, I was misguided because it was a distraction, but I really spent a lot of time stripping myself from being enamored by the body. And even though it was misguided and corrected me, I think it was during the second retreat that I attended, that just a distraction, but it was a worthwhile time, because if you're not stripping away these things, you're prone to float back into that bubble.
Yeah.
And the path is a series of stripping away these natural tendencies to float back into those fabrications.
Yeah.
So it's hard work. And I think being lay people, when you're exposed to the world, is much harder than monastic environment, because
I think so.
They're creating this almost not natural world, and they've stripped away so much of the worldly distractions. So it's even a harder task here, but it's almost a more noble thing to even attempt, being out in the world and thinking that you can do this, but it's a simple path to follow.
I agree with you. I think that's entirely true. Yeah. Were you done? I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
Yeah, I'm done.
Yeah, it's just like that, Well, let me get to Bonnie. It's gotten a little late. Bonnie, good to see you tonight.
Good to see you too. I have nothing more better to add, so thank you for clarifying.
Did you see how it explained all three marks of existence?
Yes, clarifying.
Good.
There was some parts that were even clear.
Yeah, it's a remarkable sutta in that if you understand the context, understand dependent realization, Four Noble Truths, you're integrating the Eightfold Path, you could look at this sutta to really boost your Dhamma practice, because there's so much direct information. You want to understand what it's like to understand. There it is, these 10 understandings. And imagine, again, the context, that the Buddha was teaching Ananda something to take to someone who was sick, to relieve their illness. And he relieved the disease or hopefully relieved the disease in Girimananda's mind by understanding the Dhamma, by seeing things clearly. I want to ask Terry, give Terry another chance to join us. Terry, how are you? Are you
I'm
there?
doing well, thank you. Yes,
Good.
I am.
How was your class tonight?
Oh, it was great. I really enjoyed it. So,
Good. You had enough context to understand what I was talking about?
yeah,
Well, you continue, and you'll get it. Feel free to contact me anytime, Terry. Send me an email if you got any questions or you just want to chat.
Okay.
Have you been watching my videos or listening to the audio recordings?
No, I haven't had an opportunity to do that yet.
Okay, just to point that out to you, that all that's. Have you been to the website though? BecomingBuddha.com. Okay, so there's a lot. All right. Well, I'm glad you joined us tonight. And again, feel free to contact me anytime. We're going to close like we always do with metta. And our retreat's coming up. I think it's 5 or 6 weeks away, May 16th and 19th. There's only 4 or 5 beds left in the Timeless Zen residence. And I don't know if the other residence is available to us. So if you're thinking of coming and you haven't registered yet, please do so soon. And there's only double rooms left. So, okay, let's finish with metta. Find your relaxed meditation posture. Gently close your eyes, gently close your mouth. And again, take a moment to become mindful of your in-breath and your out-breath. And these are the Buddha's words on metta from the Karaniya Metta Sutta. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud or demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove. Wishing, in gladness and in safety, may all beings be at ease. Whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short, or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born, may all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another. Even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings. Radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will. Whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness, one should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding. By not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. Thank you all for a wonderful class tonight. Peace.
Thank you, John.
Good. Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Kevin, for joining.
Thanks, John. Have a good week.
You too. Bye-bye.